everybody. You are listening to the History Boys. I am Christopher Whedon, and you know, gang, I've been thinking. I have really been doing nothing but playing video games lately because I don't really have a job. I have two fake jobs, one of them being a podcast, the other being a food delivery driver. You know,
yeah.
My wife works. She's smart and prettier than me and smarter than me, and I think that I'm living in a sitcom right now. I'm like the deadbeat husband. I got cats. Cats don't play well in sitcoms, though. So, I mean, what sitcom has cats? You know,
Sabrina
the Teenage Witch.
Cats don't make for good TV.
And definitely not for good musical theater.
Just real quick, Tyler, I'm going to try History Boy here. Cats don't make good TV. Full House, they had Comet, because you could have Comet show up, do tricks. Cats don't do tricks. So they're
So what you're saying
useless.
Is TV has failed because it has no place for cats, and the internet is succeeding because it's nothing but cats.
Yes.
And to add to that, the only reason why Sabrina the Teenage Witch was even mentioned is because it did have a cat, and they had to make it a puppet. That cat's a puppet because you can't get a cat.
Wait, no, really?
Most of the time.
It had a trained cat that would run through the scenes and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, when it talked, it was real, but the rest of the time, it was just a puppet.
Okay, now I understand.
Because the cat had a really good contract, and he's like, I'm going to say my lines, but the rest of the time, I'm going to need a stand-in because I'm too good for this. You know, I'm a cat, and that's
he was a devout. The cat was a devout Christian, and he needed a stand-in for all the sex scenes. Yeah, we're talking about the same show, right?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say because it's dealing with all of the dark forces.
Yeah,
she's
he was fine with that. He was a specific sect of Christianity that fully embraces witchcraft.
Yeah,
they're like, who was the first witch if not Jesus?
Yeah, healing
Makes
people
a lot of sense.
Pulling fish out of his ass or whatever the fuck he did.
Yeah, I think that was
doing
the party
whatever
trick.
he wants.
He can do whatever he wants.
I am everyone's favorite dumb damsel in distress, Zach Mack, and I am a history boy.
Yeah.
All right.
A history damsel. We should change the show to History Damsels.
History games.
And I am Jerry Nash, your humble history boy. As always, thank you so much for listening. We're back to remote recording, gentlemen. To open our new season, I have something really cool planned for us. Something we've never really done before, and I'm pretty excited about it. It's going to be an epic series. This is part 1 of Wyatt Earp's Wild West.
Oh, hell yeah.
It's going to be a whole series.
Woo!
And, yeah, basically in this series, we're going to attempt to cover the entire story of the Wild West as it occurred to Wyatt Earp and his brothers, and then other legendary figures that surrounded that, like Bat Masterson and Doc Holliday, and all the myths and legends in between.
So Val Kilmer played Bat Masterson? Is that what you were saying?
No. Val Kilmer played Doc Holliday.
No, he played
Masterson.
Batman. I've seen it.
I've seen him in the Batman film.
Bat is actually not mentioned in the movie Tombstone.
Batman also is not mentioned.
The character of Batman, it's the same actor, but they're not playing the same guy in the different pictures.
It's the same actor. I don't know if it's the same character.
They're playing the same role.
It's not true. Oh my god.
Jerry, one thing before we get started. This will be is this going to be a single episode, or is this going to be a multi-parter?
It's definitely a multi-parter. It's going to be a series.
You said it was an
So
epic.
in that case, can we refer to this episode as the Wild World of Wyatt Earp, Episode 1, and then next time will be Episode 2?
Oh my god, I love this so much.
I mean, you kind of just did. I don't know if we need to write it, but
we don't need to
just
write it.
There we go. I fucking swear to God, if when this goes up on fucking Spotify, if I go to look, because I do listen to my own work to quality check my contribution. The rest of you guys can go fuck yourself. But if I don't see episode 1 on there, I'm out. I'm done.
Well, we'll see.
Okay. All right.
You're gonna find a way to get rid of Tyler. I'm just saying.
Yeah. We've done it before. It's easy.
Yeah, exactly.
But don't worry, dear listener, because I am going to try to guide you through this story. We're going to get to know all of these people, and I'll tell you how they all die. Don't worry.
Hell yeah.
Sweet.
But yeah, these legends that we're going to talk to are deeply ingrained in the American consciousness. They still affect our world to this day.
When does Babe the Big Blue Ox be a part of it?
Oh, he's in there.
Paul Bunyan, he's fictional like Bat Masterson.
No, Wyatt Earp killed Paul Bunyan, and that's how he became, king of the Wild West.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start from the very beginning with Wyatt Earp's father. He was a man named Nicholas Porter Earp. And Nick Earp, that's what I'm going to call him, Nick Earp. He was born in 1813, the third of 10 children, so one of many. Nick moved around a lot, and he worked sort of odd jobs where he could find them. And a lot of people kind of did this back in the day. This is kind of how you made ends meet. He actually served in the military in the Black Hawk War and in the Mexican-American War. He was actually discharged for getting kicked in the crotch by a mule. That's how he was discharged through disability.
God.
What happened to the
bitch.
mule? Did the mule get court-martialed?
I'm sure the mule was fine.
Was this before or after Wyatt? Wyatt wasn't born yet?
He wasn't born yet, no.
That guy had balls of steel. I'm just
Right?
going to say the guy.
He had multiple
He had
children
active
afterwards.
sperm after that. He was more
Think about how
potent than
great
ever.
he could have been if he wasn't all ball kicked by a mule.
He had a lot of
Dick
children, too.
I mean, if
Yeah,
he
Wyatt
wanted
Earp
to
would've
get
been
out of the
able to-
military, he could have just said that he had bone spurs, but
Yeah,
didn't have to pay that donkey.
Wyatt Earp would have been able to punch people across the country.
Yeah.
He's far too powerful.
Do you mean that he could punch someone so hard they'd fly across the country, or he would
go
go, his
flying.
fist would go all the way across the country and punch a
He
person
didn't-
at a normal
Yep.
strength
So that's
level?
how
I
that's
imagine
how I imagined it.
He would have Mr. Fantastic style powers, so he could go either way. He could put all the weight of his body in his hand and punch them, which would send them
Okay.
flying across the country. Or
see.
he could stretch his hand, grab him by the throat, and just carry him across this country. Well, I don't know. He sat there in a tavern, enjoying his morning tea.
That mule did the world a favor by not creating a human weapon of mass destruction.
Yeah. A mule knew. He was actually sent backwards through time to kick.
Yeah, that mule shouldn't
in
have
the
gotten a
balls.
court-martial. He should have got a commendation.
Well, they'd only know.
Foresight.
It's the ultimate tragedy. Nobody knew what that mule had done.
Nick was a farmer and a cooper, and then he would become a bootlegger and a lawman at the same time, by the way.
That's cool.
And he moved his family around the United States a lot. We'll kind of get in the weeds with that as well.
So he was a bad cop. He was like the Shield.
Yeah, he was.
He had to move his family around to
bad cop.
escape himself.
He was Michael Chiklis.
You're actually not far off. He moved his family around every time like shit got too heavy.
He's like, well,
Yeah,
you could do that back then.
you could. you
Once
could.
again, my past has caught up with me. Pack your bags, children.
That's pretty much exactly. You're gonna see exactly what's gonna happen. They lived in Kentucky for a long time. The Earps did, and Nick had 3 children actually with his first wife, Abigail Storm. They had 2 sons, Newton,
Wait,
Jasper, Earp.
Storm?
Storm. Yes, that was her
Storm.
maiden name. Yeah,
Okay.
Abigail Storm. Yeah.
So, I'm just saying, Mr. Fantastic's wife's last name was Storm.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a really good. All right, let's just blow
I
right
didn't even
past
know
it.
that. Yeah, I'm just keep going.
Well, he had 2 sons with Abigail, Newton Jasper Earp. That was the oldest of the Earps, the Earp sons. Then he had Nathan T. Earp and a daughter, Maria Ann Earp. But the unfortunate thing is that Abigail actually passed away in 1839, leaving Nick with these 3 children, completely alone.
Selfish.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Single dad trying to do his best.
Well, 2 months after his wife died, Maria Ann also passed away, just 10 months old. And then a year later, his son Nathan also passed away. So Newton is the only one that survives from that marriage with Abigail.
Yeah.
So you're saying that I'm highly suspecting that Newton wanted dad all to himself, And let's just say he applied Newton's first and only law, the law of death.
The law of vengeance.
Jesus Christ. Oh my god.
Were there any figs around these corpses?
The very same year that Nathan passed away, Nick actually remarried to a 19-year-old Virginia Ann Cooksey. They didn't waste any time. They started having children right away. And he moved his family to Monmouth, Illinois. Now, Nick would have 8 children with Virginia, or Ginny, as they called her. There was James, who was the oldest from this marriage, James Cooksey Earp. After James, there was Virgil Walter Earp. Then after him, there was Martha Elizabeth Earp. They were all born before Wyatt. When Nick was actually discharged from the army from getting kicked in the crotch by the mule, he came home in December, and in March 19th of 1848, Wyatt Barry Stapp Earp was born.
Oh, Stapp.
Which
Yeah,
one was Sam Elliott?
He was Virgil.
Oh, that's
James
right.
was actually not in Tombstone.
Yeah,
Even though he was actually there.
he wasn't
we'll
Bill
get
Paxton.
there. That's actually Morgan Earp.
Yeah, just if our fans have seen that movie, you can help just picture those characters.
Yeah,
That
once
kinda makes
I
it
kind of
easier.
get through all these guys, it'll become easier to kind of get through. But there's a lot of kids here. Just bear with me. But Wyatt was actually named after a captain that Nick really respected while he was in the military. His name was Captain Wyatt Barry Stapp. So he named his son Wyatt Barry Stapp Earp. So that's how he got that name.
You know, when you say the word Earp over and over, it makes you realize how silly of a name that is.
It is a silly name.
Like, when you say Wyatt Earp, I'm like, badass. But you're just...
Right.
The repeated Earp just sounds...
Yeah.
You know...
Yeah.
He's like Earps all berries, just like the captain I liked.
Yeah, just like the captain he's named after.
Yeah.
Captain Wyatt Crunch.
Earps all berries Stapp Crunch.
Yeah.
That's his full name, yes. Came from a long line of crunches.
Yeah. During sort of this time, Nick decided that they were going to follow Newton out west to California during the gold rush, right? The days of 49. To find... He wasn't actually looking for gold, though. He was actually going to find farmland out in California.
Not the same appeal as when you say there's farmland in them there hills.
Right.
And then you little dance and shoot your guns in the air.
Yeah.
So you're saying Newton, he went in a direction, and
Yes.
Once he was in motion, he stayed in motion, so there's
Yes.
nothing they could do, and they had to follow him.
They did follow him, yes. They followed him
And
out
once he got
west.
to the farm, he was no longer in motion, and he stayed no longer in motion.
Well, the plan was actually to go all the way to California, but Martha actually became ill, deathly ill, and Nick and the family actually stopped and changed plans and actually went to Pella, Iowa, instead of going all the way out west.
Ah, yes. Beautiful, balmy
Have I mentioned that
Iowa.
I'm from Iowa?
Yeah.
I was thinking
You
that.
have indeed.
And I was also thinking of the Tom Waits song, Going Out West.
Have you ever been to Pella, Iowa?
I want to say that we've been through there because I think they have a thing that's like, it's not like birthplace, but it's like childhood home of Wyatt Earp or something like that. They have a couple of dumb things. Like, they're like, here's the General Mills factory that Ashton Kutcher used to work at. Like, it's anything they can do to drum up interest around there.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, and they even have the sign, home of birthplace of the Beatles.
Yeah.
See,
Well, it says birthplace of a band called the Beatles.
it's spelled B-E-E-T.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were the Beatles.
So the Beatles.
Less successful.
Yeah.
Way less successful.
Significantly.
You got John, Harry, Craig, and
And the other guy.
And Stinky.
Wilbur.
Yeah, Stinky.
Wilbert.
Wilbur
Stinky Johnson.
Yeah.
people said he invented the blues. No, but it was in Pella, Iowa, where Morgan Seth Earp was born, and the even younger brother Baxter Warren Earp, who they called Warren. Warren
and
Earp
Morgan is Bill Paxton.
Warren is
May he
Bill
rest in
Paxton.
peace.
Morgan, yes, is Bill Paxton. Warren Earp is actually not in the movie either. The ones you see in the movie Tombstone are Virgil, who is Sam Elliott, and Wyatt, who is
Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell, yeah, and then Morgan was Bill Paxton.
Mm-hmm.
That'll kind of help keep it together.
I just picture those actors, to be honest.
Yeah, the Wyatt Earp movie I actually watched the other day is. You'll see. After you listen to this whole thing, you'll go back and watch that movie, and you'll be like, "Yeah, this isn't necessarily that great."
In retrospect, are you saying it's a little bit more Wyatt Earp than it is Wyatt Earp?
Nice.
Thank you.
God damn it.
Maybe.
I think that joke
They just
is
got us another
one.
1-star review on fucking iTunes.
They're like, "God damn it, I hate that fucking guy."
We encourage Tyler to say things like that because of those who may not enjoy it.
Yeah. But Martha, unfortunately, did pass away in Pella, Iowa in 1856 at the age of 10 from her illness. So Nick sold the Iowa farm after that and moved back to Monmouth. It was different now, though, in Monmouth. It was actually harder for him to find business as a cooper and as a farmer.
Ever since that Walmart went up.
Well,
Yep.
it was widely regarded that Nick was an abrasive, coarse, and difficult man to deal with on all fronts. People didn't really like dealing with him all that often.
Is it weird that I don't know?
Guy.
Yeah.
I don't know what a Cooper is.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it either.
Cooper.
I thought it was that kind of raccoon that stole things.
Like
No.
Sly Cooper.
Like a Sly Cooper.
Like Sly Cooper.
Yes.
A cooper is a very old profession. They were the guys that made like wooden casks and barrels and vats and things like that.
Ah.
Okay.
Still exists to this day.
Sweet.
So you
Cooper.
could, in fact, be hanging with Mr. Cooper.
Yeah.
He made barrels, but they had a bunch of like cool like purple triangles and squares and shit on them. You know what I'm talking about?
They painted them.
I'm specifically referencing the opening to that show.
Yeah, it was very. It was clearly a show made in the '90s.
Yeah. So that is actually when Nick turned to lawing, being a lawman. To make money. He became elected as constable, which wasn't actually a full gig at the time, and most of that job, it was just like collecting, tax and licensing fees from like the surrounding people and bringing them back and stuff like that. It was actually a pretty sweet gig. He'd get a stipend per month and whatnot.
Yeah, it wasn't
Pretty sweet
supposed to,
gig.
but he definitely got a stipend.
Yeah.
Well, you got to take a little cut for yourself if you're out there constabling all day. You need money for chewing tobacco and like I don't know.
Good pair of shoes.
Yeah, mealy apples and a good pair of shoes.
You're on your feet all day.
Yeah.
Well, to supplement his income, Nick was running illegal booze through the town in shady establishments, and they were taking cuts from everyone. And if you're the law, then who's going to stop you, And a lot of historians actually believe that his sons actually helped him in this endeavor.
Oh, hell yeah.
Run illegal booze.
Nice.
Back then, you're in these one-horse towns, and you're like, I could buy a case of the real stuff, and it's going to take me 2 weeks by rail, or I could get it from the moonshiners down the pasture, and they'll have it to me the next. I mean, I'm just trying to do the logic here.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense that most people would buy provisions from bootleggers because you avoid all kinds of taxes, and it's probably way more convenient.
And it's way
supply and
stronger,
demand.
so you can forget about your time in the coal mines.
Well, yeah. I thought you were going to say so you could water it down and make more money. But yeah, also to help you forget.
Also that.
Yeah. Why not both?
Yeah.
Just mine and coal, just the most hungover you've ever been. every day of your life.
Yeah.
It's breakfast time. Time to black out.
Yeah. Better get going. They actually did drink a lot of booze back in the day. If you look at how much booze was drank back then versus now, it's like, Jesus Christ, you guys, like, keep it together. My God.
Yeah, I always feel like they had to have, like, I think they're made it, in being made of stronger stuff on the regular, I feel like even hangovers they could handle better than I could.
They weren't made of stronger stuff. They just died earlier.
They didn't have a
When
choice.
you die of
Good
cirrhosis
point.
of the liver at 28,
Estranged from your families constantly. Yeah. In 1859, though, he was caught and he was tried and convicted for bootlegging, and he couldn't pay his fine or court costs, so his land was auctioned off, and the Earps moved back to Pella, Iowa, after Monmouth. Mm-hmm. So they were like, well, fuck Monmouth, and moved back to Pella, Iowa.
So apparently being a constable and a bootlegger doesn't make you enough money to have a lawyer. Like,
no, not really. Well, they're like, oh, bootlegging, boom. Like
Yeah.
the judicial process for certain things moved a lot faster, especially out west.
Well,
Sure.
I mean,
Not that
they're
that's
like,
out
well,
west.
I
He
could
was
get
hanging
a
by that afternoon.
Yeah.
could get a city lawyer, but it's going to take 3 weeks by rail, or I could get a bootleg lawyer and he'll be here tonight. It's just a bullfrog with a top hat. Immediately gets convicted.
Yeah. It's like, I
Goddamn
don't
country lawyer got me again.
I mean, he looked like he was right for the job. He was
He was
dressed for
singing
it.
and dancing when it was just me.
That adorable hat.
He looked like he knew what he's doing. So in 1861, however, the Civil War began. Newton, James, and Virgil joined the Union Army. Now, real quick, Virgil eloped in 1860 with a Dutch girl named Ellen Rysdom. Now, both families actually opposed this marriage, and Ellen's family, she actually wanted her to marry a good Dutch boy, and the Earps just thought that Virgil was too young to marry. He was 18 years old. So they eloped, and Virgil had joined the army. Ellen's parents, after some time had passed, actually told her that Virgil had been killed in the war. She was quickly wed to someone else, unwittingly committing bigamy, because Virgil was still very much alive.
Did she actually think he was dead, or was she just like, I gotta get the fuck out of this?
Oh yeah, no, she was very much in love with Virgil. They were definitely in love with each other, and they broke him up and said, no, Virgil's dead. And she had a child, a daughter, Nellie Jane, that was Virgil's, that he never saw again for a really long time. Because Ellen went with a group of people out to Oregon Territory when Virgil... Well, Virgil was devastated. And
that sucks.
Yeah, when he came back to Pella after the war to find her, he was told that she had married and had a new life for herself. He was, understandably devastated, and he would go and join the rest of the Earps in California because, in the meantime, Nick had moved the family yet again from Pella to San Bernardino, California.
Cool.
Anyone who goes out to Oregon Territory is in for a shock. It's all Antifa over there.
Antifa?
Yeah.
A branch of my family actually moved to Oregon Territory around this time as well. Which is just, I don't know, interesting. James Earp actually saw major action in the war, and he was wounded in the arm. Temporarily, he lost all functionality in that arm, but it came back after a certain amount of time. Yeah.
Ooh, that's a
he could have
relief.
had it cut off.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Just walk it
You
off.
want us to
You'll be
cut
fine.
it? You want us to cut it off? I don't think it's working anymore. I'm gonna wait it out. See if things turn around on this. Just leave it dangling for a few. Like 9 out of 10 guys who do that, they're stuck with an arm that's just dangling.
Yeah. And I'm sure they didn't have things like, physical therapy back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
He did that himself.
I mean, you probably just would want to cut it off if it's dangling like that. Otherwise, it'll get stuck on a fence post or something.
The real problem.
You know how you keep hooking your like pocket on like a cabinet? You know, it's like that.
Oh, I thought it was waving on its own. It's stuck on a fence post again.
Just cut the fucking thing off.
I kept getting stuck on this here fence post. Yeah. Well, he was, of course, discharged in 1863 for disability, and also went to San Bernardino with the rest of the family in 1864. Now, many think that it was here that Wyatt, like on the way from Pella to San Bernardino, that Wyatt heard his first shots fired in anger here, because he says, and he's not exactly trustworthy, but he says that they were attacked by hostile Indians and that they fought them off. It was somewhere near Fort Bridger, and also Jim Bridger was there, and they went hunting buffalo together, which is certainly bullshit. You know what I mean?
Don't you have to die to have a fort named after you?
No, not if you're Jim Bridger. But most of the time, that actually was true.
Yeah, and he's like, and then the President Lincoln shook my hand, and thank you for your service. You know, fighting those
That's how
Native
a lot of these
Americans.
stories are. Yeah.
President Lincoln shook my hand, and we sat down and had Thanksgiving dinner with the Native Americans.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have called them Native Americans.
I had a brief thought of, I was like, which president was president this time? I was like, oh, that's right. I'm an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like the easiest one.
It would have been Lincoln, yeah. Newton and Virgil actually did serve until the end of the war, so 1865. And that's when they joined them in San Bernardino, California as well. Now, Wyatt, during the war years, he wanted to go out and fight with his brothers. People said he looked a lot like Virgil, so he felt like he could have been just as useful in the war. He was 13 years old.
You guys look the same, so you must be as equally skilled.
That's how his 13-year-old brain sort of thought of it.
He's like, yeah, he had the exact same white mustache that Virgil had.
Yeah.
Life was tougher back then.
Yeah. He hated farming, Wyatt did. He really hated farming. And he actually ran away from home multiple times. Each time, Nick went out and found him and brought him back home. Each time.
He's like, I hate this farming. I'm going to go shoot bad guys for a living.
Boy ran away again. Get my burlap sack.
And you know that he beat the shit out of him, too.
No, Nick did believe that beating children was totally fine. He even told Wyatt, like, I'm going to have to whoop you. And,
yeah. In this day and age, I'd be surprised if there was a father who didn't feel that way.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
They'd be like, that dad's weak. He doesn't beat his kids. They're going to be running wild.
Child abuse hadn't been invented yet. They're like, abuse? They're not dead. I'm not a monster.
Yeah.
And even if they did die, they just called that the old whoopsie daisy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because when you're whooping them, you're like, whoopsie daisy, I whooped them too hard, now they're dead.
That's where that comes from. No.
And the daisies are the daisies that grow up from the grave.
Yeah.
Or that you leave on their grave, either way.
Jesus Christ.
Now, in 1865, in San Bernardino, Virgil found work as a teamster, which was a really good skill to have back then, because operating teams of horses, you know, for stagecoaches and things like that was, in demand, and way more difficult than it looks, you know?
That's where the term teamster comes from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Teams of pack animals.
Huh. Interesting.
Whole team of horses.
Yeah. And
so he wasn't part of the union then?
It wasn't a union yet. That's a story for a different day. Now, by 1866, 16-year-old Wyatt joined his brother on stage trips transporting cargo all over the West. Utah, Nevada. You know, they weren't called this time, but, you know, there was Nevada territory, Utah territory, New Mexico,
place.
Arizona. Yeah.
More sand place.
Wyoming, Colorado. All over the West.
All the rest. Up the West.
Yeah.
Sea monster, because they hadn't really discovered that place.
No. He learned how to handle guns. He learned how to how to be a teamster too. He grew up to be about 6 feet tall, which was tall for the time. He was a thin and dour kid. Most people said that he didn't laugh all that much. Like,
He's a real bummer.
At all. Yeah.
Not a lot to laugh about back then.
Yeah, right?
He'd say it to people and they'd be like, back when? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, now, back then. In the Old West.
What are you talking about? This is the New West. No, he got a job in Wyoming, moving cargo for the Union Pacific Railway Company. You know, moving things by stage here and there as the railways started coming through and building. And this is sort of where he was introduced to the sporting world. Remember the sporting world?
Is that
yeah.
hunting the homeless?
No. This would be, you know, gamblers,
Okay.
you know, sex workers,
Oh.
you know, saloon owners, that type of thing. Soapy Smith
Our
style
kind
stuff.
of people is what you're saying.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought... Well,
Big time.
well, I retract every time I ever said I'm not interested in sports.
But yeah, he learned how to make money as a faro dealer. And faro, it was like the big game of the 19th century, especially out west. Faro is basically craps with cards, is what it is. You'd have a couple of decks of cards, and you'd bet what card was going to come up next, right? And it's a pretty easy game to learn, and it's a super easy game to rig. It's already rigged towards the house, right? It's
Right.
intrinsically rigged towards the house, but you could rig it even further if
Rig
you
the
knew what you
shit
were
out of
doing.
it.
Yeah, but you could make a
didn't-
good living as a faro dealer.
I
Just
didn't
add
do
more
shit. I
decks.
didn't rig fucking shit.
Yeah,
Is what they'd say.
yeah, and yeah, if somebody called you a liar or something, that was grounds to shoot at somebody, you know, because they'd be like, "Hey, why'd you shoot him?" It's like, he called me a liar. It's defending my honor, and they'd be like, "Oh,
All right.
don't do it
Were
again."
Good enough.
Were you lying? Yeah. Lying is fine. Accusing
Yeah.
somebody
They're
of
like-
lying.
Yeah,
Wait a second. So you are a liar. So how do I know that you just didn't lie to
What'd you
me
just
about
call me?
them accusing you to be a liar? Maybe they just said, like, stop brandishing that gun in my face, and then you shot them in the face, and then
Yeah.
you made up this tall
Yeah.
tale of being called a liar.
that's
He's like,
pretty much.
You're never gonna know now because he's dead. He's like, he's crawling away. You are a liar.
You didn't even kill him.
Well, and that's kind of the way they treated it, where it's like, huh, so the only guy that knows the other side of the story's dead, huh? It's like, yeah, it's like
Fuck
the
it.
perfect crime, you know? But he was also incredibly interested in boxing. He learned to box.
Pugilism.
He refereed a lot of bouts as well. He knew the rules really well. So he actually refereed a few bouts, and one of them was actually pretty high profile. It was between the professor, Mike Donovan, and another kind of roustabout Irishman, John Chauncey. Now, the professor was called the professor because he later taught a bunch of people how to box and the art of pugilism. He actually taught Teddy Roosevelt and his sons how to box years later.
Oh shit!
Cool.
Yeah.
The trick is to punch them in the face.
As hard as you can.
Yeah.
You want to punch them in the face and not get punched in the face yourself,
Yeah.
or at least at
Yeah.
the minimum
They're like-
amount.
Yeah.
After mentioning that you're not supposed to get hit in the face by them, all the hands go down.
Yeah, that'll be $200.
Yeah. Now John Chauncey was more like Wyatt in a lot of ways. He was a gambler, saloon owner, and a boxer who drifted through the West, just trying to make a living. You know, as
like
a lot
this
of
guy.
people kind of did
Yeah.
back in the day. Now some say that Wyatt didn't drink, preferring coffee instead. Now, people that say that do have evidence for this. Like Virgil tried to get him drunk one time, and he had like one drink, and instantly became fucked up. And some say that he didn't drink anymore after this. This is probably false. He probably drank heavily on certain rare occasions and then signed off of it after a certain point in his life.
Right.
Okay.
That's more likely what happened with Wyatt. Not that he just, I never drink, you know. He wasn't like that. Now, the whole West at this time was booming. It had become pocked with mining towns and shipping towns and cattle towns. Cattle towns, when the cattlemen were driving these big cow herds up like the Chisholm Trail, which was in southern Texas, that went into Abilene, Kansas. You know, once they gave them their pay and said, all right, you know, here's your money. You can be on your way until we need you again next time we're, you know, moving cattle. They would flood these towns that popped up along the way and go spend it all on booze and women of the night, the soiled doves, as they were condescendingly referred to.
Oh, they're going to be soiled when I'm done with them.
Jesus Christ.
Is what they were saying, not me personally. I'm a happily married man.
But the whole economy of these towns were based upon these sort of ne'er-do-well guys that would roll through town. You know, they would get rowdy. You know, they would drink a lot and then fire guns and shit.
Oh, you got
because there's one constable, you know, or one sheriff or one marshal or something like that, you know.
Right.
And they can do whatever the hell they want, and it would terrify people, you know. And didn't matter.
Please don't do exactly what you're probably going to do.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I know. What a time. You ride into town, you got pockets full of money from doing a cattle job, and everyone's like, oh, these guys are going to trash the whole town. And seeing the look on their face makes you want to lean over to your buddy and be like, we're going to fucking trash this town.
Yeah.
Right? I don't say this often, but if I had a time machine, I feel like I legitimately would do well in one of these gangs. being pretty much doing what I do now, but with those guys.
Yeah.
Oh, they lived a
fights,
harder,
but never finishing them.
They lived a harder life than you, Tyler. Honestly, you would be an old man by this point.
Yeah, they call me Old Man Tyler, 38 years old.
Yeah, they would overwhelm local law enforcement. They just had to kind of mitigate these guys being around, you know. And then there were more organized elements of people that, you know, turned into gangs, you know, gangs of these cattle drivers that were, you know, decided that they were going to do whatever the fuck they wanted to do, you know. And some were more organized than others, but they were generally all referred to as cowboys. And the term cowboy actually originates back east, up by Vermont, New Hampshire, for people that raised cattle. But now it was more of a pejorative term.
Look at this fucking cowboy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Trashing
it was
town.
more of an insult. Yeah. The Eastern papers, you know, ate it up. Everybody back east wanted to read about the cowboys and about the Wild West, you know, that was out there. And the cowboy menace.
They still do.
You're working at a bank, or you're working the trolley, and so you flick a nickel to the kid for the Sunday edition, and he bites it, you know, and it's real because you know you're a legitimate guy. You're gonna read about these stories. It sounds pretty good. I don't know. Honestly, I wouldn't mind being in that. I'd be the cowboy, I'd be the trolley man, and I'd be the boy. All of them sound great.
All right. So in 1868, Nick, yet again, moved the family, this time back east, to Lamar, Missouri. Could you imagine, like, all right, we're going from San Bernardino to Missouri, you know.
I mean...
Take that surfboard and you throw it in the trash, Wyatt.
It's like, your pa got himself in a real jam again. We're going back east.
Well, there, Nick was elected constable, and after he was elected...
He just goes from town to town causing problems, and then you're like, I'm new in town.
Constable.
You guys need a constable?
Yeah.
Why, sure, stranger.
Yeah.
Here's the authority of the town.
Yeah. Our previous constable just had to jump town because it turns out they were a bootlegger and up to no good. Oh, I know all about that kind of.
We caught him selling
shenanigans.
shine.
Yeah. 6 weeks later, they're like, "Fuck again."
Yeah.
Is there actually a real constable, or are they all criminals in disguise?
There's 6 of them that just go from town to town selling shine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Wyatt joined Nick, and so did the rest of the brothers. They actually all kind of rendezvoused in Lamar, Missouri.
Bring your shining boots.
Yeah. And then...
Bring your shining boots. We're going to have a psychic battle.
Then his head explodes. That's how Nick died.
Well, Nick actually became a justice of the peace. The justice of the peace for Lamar, Missouri.
He was elected president of the United States.
And he actually passed the role of constable to Wyatt.
That's nepotism.
So Wyatt was Wyatt was not elected constable. He was given that job. And Wyatt thought that was a pretty sweet deal because it was $100 a month, and he collected the fees and whatnot. But otherwise, he was able to do whatever else he wanted to do, like dealing faro and being a bouncer and shit like that.
Right.
Firing guns in the air.
Yeah. He actually didn't do that. We'll get to the point where people get real tired of people firing guns in the air.
100% sober. Broad daylight.
Yeah. It was in Lamar that Wyatt fell in love with the 20-year-old Urilla Sutherland. They were wed by Nick, because he was the justice of the peace. They were wed on January 10th, 1870, which is the day we are recording. Yeah, we were recording
today.
on
Whoa.
January 10th.
It's actually a fun fact on that day. I was wed on January 10th, 3 years ago.
Personally?
By
No,
you.
you were not.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. That's pretty nuts. Okay.
Yeah, that's crazy. Today,
Wait. Today is
Wow.
your wedding anniversary, and you're spending it recording the podcast?
Well,
it's not our wedding anniversary. It's the paperwork.
Yeah.
It was
Paperwork
signed
anniversary.
3 years ago today.
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, as far as the government's concerned, it's the 13th because it was a Friday, so
Right.
it didn't get filed until Monday. So we kind of just celebrate the wedding, the ceremony, the anniversary.
That makes sense.
Well, during that year, 1870, a lot happened for Wyatt and his blossoming new family. He bought a plot of land with his new pregnant wife. He was going to start his new family. His brothers lived close by. His whole family was around him. He actually won an election for constable against his older brother, Newton. Because the reason why is they were like, well, I'll run against you, you run against me, and that way, either way, an Earp is going to be constable. Because they were corrupt. I mean, this is textbook corruption.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
But they're not wrong.
No.
I don't know why they didn't just have, Jeb Bush run in
Yeah, right.
2000.
Please clap.
That's why, because he sucks.
Yeah. He was elected constable. Urilla actually contracted typhoid fever. And she passed away with their unborn child.
That
Some actually do
sucks.
say, some say that she passed away in childbirth with the child as well. But more people think that it's typhoid fever, actually, that took them both. Later in life, Wyatt never spoke of Urilla. The memory must have been too painful, but he never talked about it.
I feel like in
really at
those
all.
days, though, there's this traumatic event that you had in the past, you'd never mention it again.
No. You
Right.
just move on. You wouldn't
Just
deal
carry
with
that family trauma and send it down the generations.
Yeah, exactly. Just send her
It's
on
like,
down the
well,
line.
Millennials will be dealing with this shit. It's never cyclical. It'll never end. And we have to go to therapy because of some fucking assholes in the 1800s.
Now, a lot of people say that after this, it was because of this that Wyatt sort of plummeted into a downward spiral of depression.
It's gonna be so hard to do when you're not drinking.
Well,
Yeah,
he drank. He drank a lot.
There we go.
He turned to thieving.
Cool.
All of that stuff. He was not referred to in the best light, let's just say, after this point in time.
Well, you know how it is. Your wife dies, and you just get into the habit of performing a bunch of drunken B&Es. And kind of rubs a lot of people the wrong way.
It pisses people off. He sold the house and the land. He was then accused of embezzling the license fees that he collected as constable, which he probably was.
Oh, yeah. He absolutely that shit.
He falsified court documents, which resulted in Wyatt owing a bunch of money that he couldn't afford.
I like that that's just a fine, by the way.
Yeah,
Falsifying court documents. That's a hardcore felony.
Yeah, now it is.
It was life in prison, but he's like, put me there. I dare you. It's like Gorilla Dying was his villain. I was just going to say, it's like Gorilla Dying was his villain origin story.
Yeah.
Oh, dude. Yeah, it kind of is.
It's like when Gwen Stacy died in and Spider-Man murdered all those people.
Yeah.
Yeah, he went on a rampage.
Oh, you guys haven't seen the new movie yet, but
he has an AK-47 and he shoots a bunch of people.
It's just in Times Square.
It was a strange turn for the Spider-Man franchise.
He wrote Web Slinger on the side of the AK, and he's like, "It's the same."
Yeah. I'm just tired of it all. No, in March of 1871, because he just started drifting from town to town, drinking, gambling, getting thrown out of town. You know,
badass.
Not on a rail, but they would drag you to the end of town and throw you and be like,
"They're not going to waste a good rail on him."
Yeah. Well, they
That's
called him a bummer. They called him a bummer. A bummer. Wyatt Earp, the town bummer.
Fucking bumming me out.
Bummer, man.
Well, that was the original term for bum. It was shortened to bum.
Yeah.
But,
Well, bums are bummers.
Yeah, the homeless do bum me out.
Yeah, they bum me out big time.
Jesus.
Because I care for their suffering. Jesus.
Yeah,
They just need to cheer up, you know? Why don't they just cheer up?
Jesus Christ. So, as I was saying, in March of 1871, Wyatt, a man named John Shone, and some local tough named Ed Kennedy, they stole 2 horses from a guy named James Keyes, and they ran off. And
That's
3 days later...
Offense.
Oh, it is. James Keyes caught up with them, and they were, you know, like he formed a posse and went and got his 2 horses back. And they arrested the 3 guys and threw them in jail. John Shone's wife actually testified that Wyatt and Ed got John Shone drunk and threatened to hurt him if he didn't comply with their plan. Like, he was supposed to take the horses a ways away to meet up with, like, a third party. And it didn't end up going that far. Ed Kennedy and Wyatt were definitely sitting in jail for this. And yeah, like Chris said, it is a hanging offense. It is serious business back in these days.
Well, you're not just stealing their car. You're stealing their friend.
Yeah.
I love how you said that so sincerely.
I didn't know where you're going with that. But...
They were actually arrested in what was then called Indian Territory, modern-day Oklahoma. And a grand jury returned the indictments against Kennedy and Wyatt in May. In June, a trial date was set for November 13th. Wyatt,
God, I hope somebody
however,
shoots the hanging rope.
Yeah, right. Well,
One
that's
bullet
kind
through
of how.
both ropes.
Yeah, well, that's kind of how Wyatt tells it. Is that he, he escaped it on this old mule, and that he thought he was being chased, but it was just the lead mule that he took. So the rest of his friends were actually following him, and that was the end of the story. And it's no, that was not the end of the story, and that's not how it went, Wyatt.
He was playing getaway music on his banjo.
Yeah. There's two ways this could have gone. It either that Wyatt and whoever he was imprisoned with either busted out by climbing out of the jail roof because when Wyatt was a constable, he knew that jails were actually most vulnerable in the roof. So they climbed out that way. Or that he got out on a $500 bond and jumped bail and was, disappeared and was never seen again.
You don't really need to secure the roof unless, gravity reverses or something. And lo and behold, according to Wyatt Earp, it did.
Yeah.
Well, that's because he knew Newton.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. He's like, you gotta reverse this shit, Newton. It's like, I got you, buddy.
He would never be tried for that crime now. He would never be tried for that. And yeah, he's kind of disappeared for a little while. But when he did reappear, he reappeared in, and I believe I'm pronouncing this correctly, Peoria, Illinois.
Who cares?
Peoria.
Okay, there you go.
Is it Chicago? Is it outside of Chicago? Then it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Chicago?
Yeah, right.
Nobody calls it Chicago, Chris.
I do.
Nobody's ever called it Chicago.
I did. I mispronounced. You can
Chicago
mispronounce
sounds. It sounds like the name of like a stainless steel Japanese like chef's knife. Oh, what is it? Is it a Chicago? Yeah, it's a Chicago.
That's what I was talking
Wagyu
about.
with my Chicago.
Well, that's where Chris gets all of his knives made.
Yeah, from Chicago. Yeah. He's my sensei.
Okay.
He lives in
went
Illinois.
there.
He lives in Illinois.
To get back to it, he went there because that's where a few of his brothers had some saloons and brothels open.
Even better.
Primo.
Yeah, so Wyatt and his younger brother Morgan were actually arrested for, quote, being in a house of ill fame, end quote, multiple times. Not once. Like multiple
I get what that
times.
means.
Yeah.
And that's illegal.
Yes. Back then, yes. Well, and sort of today.
Yeah, just being
It's a different thing, yeah. Now, according to evidence, it becomes clear that Wyatt was a bouncer for the brothel, a bartender, and a pimp, along with his brothers. We know this because it was common practice during that time for the sex workers to take the last name of their pimps or madams. So
that's
there were
romantic.
there's a way they sort of hid under the radar, but there were a lot of Mrs. Earps, you know what I mean? Wyatt is actually a little cagey about talking about this particular point in his life. They would run these brothels and illegal gambling games, and every time they would get in trouble, it was just a fine. So they just pay the fine and just keep going because it was just sort of cost of doing business. It was just
like a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah, pretty much. You just pay the fine and you keep doing what you're doing. When he first got there, he actually knew a madam that took him in, sort of took care of him, showed him the ropes, and Morgan, who sort of had his own side thing going. But her name was Jane Haspel. Later, when he was arrested again, he was arrested on a gambling riverboat that Wyatt himself owned. It was sort of it was to skirt the law. And when he was arrested with a 16-year-old Sally Haspel, who many think is Jane's daughter, and she was put in to this work through this way. Sally also called herself Mrs. Earp, but then disappears later. The local paper, when they reported it, they also called Wyatt a bummer. Local bummer.
Bumming us out,
Doesn't sound like a bummer to me. Sounds like a fucking party animal.
Right. Yeah, right?
He's really giving me the pip.
Yeah. He pimped women. He helped run bunco and rigged card games. He sold illegal booze, and he beat up drunks and kicked them out when they got too much of a problem to deal with.
Well, you know what I would do is I'd make this guy the lawman.
I'd make him the president.
Pretty much him and his brothers all did this. This is what they did most of their lives, was all this stuff sort of wrapped in together. Now, Wyatt always said that he was hunting buffalo from 1874 to 1873 to 1874.
It's a really long hunting trip.
There was money to be made. And I'll get to that later. There were some people that corroborated this story, and I'll get to that. Most people believe that it never happened because there's not a lot of evidence that he was buffalo hunting at any point, that he was, going around places and doing this kind of stuff is what he was really doing.
Or to counter what I just said, maybe that's where all the buffalo went. Is he got them all? He's like, I was gone. I just wanted. He's like, I fucking wanted to kill every single last one of them. I heard it's how you get typhoid, and I wanted revenge.
just let the corpses rot. I didn't even do anything with them.
Yeah. There you
go. Charles from Red Dead would be so mad.
Well, that's pretty much exactly what happened to those millions of buffalo. But in early 1874, he was working as a bouncer in his brother James's brothel in Wichita, Kansas, which was a cattle town. Yeah, It was a booming cattle town. And yeah, they kind of continued in Wichita doing what they had been doing in Illinois. They paid their fines and just kept doing what they were doing. And, they were sort of living on the fringe of society. When people talk about Wyatt Earp and all this stuff, they're like, oh, this lawbringer of the Wild West. Like, nah, man, he was on the fringe of society, dude. Like, you wouldn't have wanted to hang around like Wyatt and the people that he hung around. You know what I mean? Mm. There were some rough people. There were some rough people.
I likes me rough people.
I like watching them on the telly, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Rough people like on the telly?
When we get to the real rough people, though, like these people are just trying to survive any which way they can. But when we get to the real rough people, like you'll see like how rough it would have been to just exist in that time. Wyatt said that he was really good at being a bouncer and an enforcer for his brothers and his own establishment because he learned a trick while buffalo hunting. The trick was walking up to the offender and slapping them across the face or on top of the head with his gun, with his pistol.
So he would pistol
whipping.
Yes, he called it. It was called back then buffaloing. Slam somebody in the head with a gun is you got buffaloed.
So when he told people he was buffalo hunting, he probably said he's like, "What were you doing this period of time?" He's like, "Oh, buffaloing," and they assumed he meant buffalo hunting.
Well,
but what he meant was hitting people on the head with this fucking gun for years. Is the main thing he did.
That was more like the thing.
Just walking around town, just hitting people.
You go to grade school? Yeah, I did. Whap! You're not going to remember it now.
A quick thing about Wyatt Earp's gun. A lot has been made of Wyatt Earp's guns, and the gun that sort of, has been attached to him, which is the Colt Buntline Special with the really long barrel. The legend is that there was a guy by the name of Edward Zane Carroll Judson Sr., a.k.a. Ned Buntline. He was a dime store novelist, or one of those dime novelists who wrote all those like crazy made-up stories about cowboys and Old West people. He says that he got these guns commissioned and he gave them to people that gave him stories throughout the years. That's certainly bullshit. That's mentioned in actual in Stuart Lake's biography of Wyatt Earp that most people believed for a really long time. All historians say that book is total bullshit now.
Yeah.
But it you still see some of that like Wyatt Earp legend, trickle down through that book today. Anyway, it was certainly bullshit. There's actually no evidence that Wyatt owned this gun this gun ever even existed. it's all made up, is what I'm trying to say.
I mean,
Yeah.
basically, it's the equivalent of me saying that he had James Corbett's gun that shot the fucking Chapelwood Tiger.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like there's
And he
no
did.
evidence for that.
I
But
have
this
that.
gun may not have even existed at all, Now, some say that he just had a Colt 45 revolver. Some say it was a Smith & Wesson Model 3, a.k.a. the Schofield revolver.
Ah.
Yeah, some say it was a Remington with a strap on the end of it that I guess was easier for buffaloing. So
And they were
some
all
people-
Right.
just swinging around town. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Each fuck you was one person that he hit, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And they were
no one actually knows.
they were all made of solid gold.
Here's a quote from Wyatt Earp that he had later about being sort of a gunfighter, even though he wasn't really a gunfighter. Quote,
He fought with a gun.
yeah, but you'll
He
see.
hit people with a pistol. I think that's a good fight.
Yeah. Yeah. Quote, the most important thing I learned from those proficient gunfighters was the winner of a gunplay usually was the man who took his time. The second was that if I hoped to live long enough on the frontier, I would shun flashy trick shooting, grandstand play, as I would poison. Wyatt Earp, 1910.
Means that you just poison their
Dang.
food. He's like, if I really, you know what I'd do
He
is
didn't do all the tricky tricks.
I would challenge somebody with duel. Be like, pistols at dawn, and then I poison their dinner, and they wouldn't show up.
Yeah. Feel like, guess they're too much of a coward. Guess they got a sour stomach. And
Nobody thought to connect it. They're like, weird, he died. And this happens all the time.
Yeah.
you're like, I guess I'll just put my poison back into my saddlebag and ride off into the sunset. You're like, yes, you will.
As I said, Wichita was a booming cattle town. It was north on the Chisholm Trail. Wichita was. The south end being Laredo, Corpus Christi, San Antone, that kind of area.
The San Antone zone. As I like to
And it
call
ran through right through the middle of Oklahoma,
Cool.
into Kansas, Abilene being the last stop.
None of that panhandle shit.
Oh, yeah. There's firmly west of the Panhandle.
East of the
East.
Panhandle, actually.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yes.
East of the Panhandle.
Yeah. The Texas
Not,
Panhandle.
they weren't even in Oklahoma anymore. They were so far west of the panhandle.
Now, in October of 1874, Wyatt actually helped the Wichita police catch a man who had stolen a wagon.
Oh,
And he was praised for it in the paper.
good job, Wyatt.
A lot of people think that maybe this sort of helped him turn over another leaf or something.
Written by Wyatt Earp.
Yeah, exactly.
He was also publisher of the newspaper,
Yeah,
the Wichita Chronicle.
yeah. But what it did is it marked Wyatt as a man that could handle himself around the rougher elements, such as cowboys. And the West needed people that could handle cowboys.
It's like being like, salt can handle itself around salt.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, you
It's
gotta
like the
be
same
one-
thing. It's the exact same thing.
It's the
So
same
of course
thing.
it can.
Yes.
Yeah. In 1875, actually, the Marshal, Mark. In 1875, actually, Marshal Mike Meager won the election for town marshal of Wichita and hired Wyatt. He hired Wyatt, that is a hard thing
very
to
hard
say,
sentence.
as a deputy for $100 per month again. Wyatt still dealt faro, acted as a bouncer and enforcer for his brother's establishments. I'm going to leave Wyatt here for just a second, because if it's true that Wyatt went buffalo hunting sometime in 1873 and 1874, the timelines, as you can see, don't exactly match up. The person who says that they met Wyatt Earp while they were buffaloing was a man who would later become one of Wyatt's best friends throughout his whole life, a lifelong friend. And that man's name was Bat Masterson.
Hell yeah, Bruce Wayne.
Now, his real name was actually Bartholomew William Barclay Masterson. And they shortened it all the way down to Bat Masterson. Bat. Some people say is because he was really good with a bat. That's probably bullshit. They just shortened his name.
He was really bad with a bat.
Bat?
He was the son of the Batmaster.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Badmaster.
There's been some argument in historical circles whether or not he was the master of the animal, the bat, or the instrument of destruction / sporting utensil.
It was both.
Sporting utensil, I love that.
Now, Bat was actually born on November 26th, 1853, in Henryville, Quebec, Canada.
That's why he's so likable.
Yeah.
People actually aren't sure if him and his family were actual citizens, like they never actually filled anything out or did anything like that. So, like, all these elections and stuff and, like, positions that he's about to be a part of, if they knew, like, the real law, then all of his voting would be completely null and void. But no one checked, I guess.
That's why you don't teach people to read.
Yeah. Bat actually signed his name and called himself W.B. Bat Masterson his whole life. So he
Bruce
called
Wayne.
himself all of these things.
Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wayne Bruce.
Yeah.
Wayne Bruce.
Wayne Bruce, yeah.
Bruce Springsteen.
Now,
The boss.
The boss. The Bat.
he was actually the second of 6 children. The oldest being Edward, or Ed Masterson.
Hey.
He was the oldest, Edward John Masterson. He was the oldest, Ed Masterson. Then there was him, Bat Masterson, and then after him was his brother James Patrick Masterson, or Jim Masterson. Then he had a sister, Nellie, and a younger brother, Thomas. He actually lived until 1941.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, long time. George Henry was another one of his brothers, and Emma Anna Minnie is what they called her. So that was his family. They were all raised on Quebecois farms before they moved to Missouri, and then later the whole family settled near Wichita. So when Bat was still a teenager, him and his brother Ed went buffalo hunting on the prairies of the West, because buffalo hunting was, you could actually make a steady living, but it is gross work, you know what I mean? Skinning buffalo and whatnot.
Yeah. That's why you just leave them there.
And I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
I just watched that the other day.
It's a great movie.
It is.
Now, the white men always considered the buffalo to be a big, dumb animal, mainly because they were so easy to shoot. It was made even easier by the new Sharps carbine rifle. It was a large bore, single-shot, falling block, breech-loading rifle that fired a variety of calibers, all the way up to 50 caliber. It was a big gun, and it could be fired long distance, and it was easier to reload than the other guns that they had at the time.
The recoil will knock you right off your horse, though.
Yeah, you had to get off your horse.
It's
to fire one of
supposed to.
those.
That's not a
how
joke.
you get
That
off.
is the case.
Yeah, that's how you get off your horse back then. You just shoot yourself right off it.
Nobody's climbing
back
down.
on.
Yeah, you shoot it at the ground and you rocket jump onto the horse.
Exactly.
Now,
It's like Halo.
when you'd shoot one of these things from a long ways away, the buffalo would just crowd around that dead buffalo
Oh,
and then just
idiots.
keep doing what they were doing.
They're like,
So it was
sucks
easy
for
to
him.
just reload and then shoot more of them. You know what I mean?
They didn't run away.
No, they
Huh.
didn't.
They do in Red Dead.
Yeah, they didn't really in real life.
Rockstar makes smarter buffaloes than God. That's why.
Well, they just didn't have that sort of predator that could shoot you from,
Yeah.
yards and yards and yards away. You know what I mean? You had to get a little closer before this. Now, they were killed for their skin, of course. They were famous for just taking the skin, leaving the carcasses to just rot. There were also... I know, right? It seems like...
Buffalo burgers.
Maybe it's hard to travel.
Right? Yeah, Buffalo burgers, man.
Buffalo wings. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a Tyler.
Just don't get typhoid from eating them.
Yeah.
Wiping your butt with your hand and then eating a bunch of buffalo wings is a one-way ticket to typhoid town.
Well, it gets your mouth so covered in sauce. You gotta wipe it off.
Yeah. That was barbecue sauce of the time.
You gotta have one cloth for wiping your ass and one cloth for wiping the sauce off your mouth.
Yeah.
And don't get them mixed up.
Yeah. The sauce is red, but if you're bleeding, who knows?
Everybody was bleeding out of their ass back then. They weren't eating probiotics.
Because they ate so many buffalo wings.
Yeah. Spicy.
No, they were also killed for their tongue. Tongues became in vogue. Buffalo tongues became in vogue at the time.
People would wear them as a hat.
Really valuable. Good for eating. It was a delicacy.
Oh, I bet.
And sometimes they were shot just for wanton sport.
For funsies.
Just to shoot them. Yeah, just to shoot them.
That is the whitest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, yeah.
Just going into a place, stealing all the land, and shooting somebody's sacred animal for funsies.
Well, yeah, the animal that they need for complete and total survival, just slaughter all of it for no reason, or for money back in the East.
Wasn't there often I know in Red Dead there's those guys who are paid to kill the buffalo because it would fuck over the Native Americans.
Yeah, they would do that too. They would pay people to go shoot buffalo to take away food supply from the native tribes around the area.
Jesus.
Yeah. Now, before the white buffalo craze of the late 19th century, there were millions of buffalo. Millions, literally millions, with herds reaching 30 to 40 miles wide. Wow. But by the late by the 1880s, actually, fewer than 100 buffalo remained in the wild. It was all of these factors that sort of led to the near extinction of the North American bison. Something we're still dealing with. Damn. There used to be so many buffalo. There are almost none now.
That's what happens is you kill all the buffalo and then you start a civil war because you can't stop killing. So you're like, I might as well just kill my brother.
And that just kept going until pretty much the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much the 70s.
Well, in July of 1872, Ed and Bat were actually hired by a subcontractor of the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad. That was all one thing. And they were hired by the subcontractor. His name was Raymond Ritter. And it was just to grade an area of where the track would be. It was a 5-mile stretch of where the track would be. And Ed and Bat and this other guy, a couple other guys, they graded the whole thing. And they did their due diligence.
They did what they were hired to do.
Yeah, and they were owed $300.
Graded the shit out.
$100 each. When they went to find Ritter, he was nowhere to be found.
Color me surprised.
And the Mastersons, yeah, right?
They got him.
The Mastersons started asking around about Ritter, and turns out the dude had a reputation for hiring people and then not paying them when the job was done. And
regular Donald
Trump. Usually in the West, that person's gone. You know what I mean? They're gone. So like Ed and and like everyone kind of parted ways. They're like, "Fuck, I gotta find something else to do. I can't wait around here." And Bat was like, "Fuck that! I'm staying here in this, town I kind of found myself in, which would be the storied, infamous town of Dodge City, Kansas."
There we go.
He decided he was going to stay there to get his money, and word has kind of spread that this guy was a deadbeat and that Bat was an upstanding kind of guy that did the job and was looking to just get paid,
All right.
So everybody knew about this whole thing. And somebody passed along word that Ritter was actually on a train headed east, and they were going to stop at Dodge. You know, Ritter wasn't going to get off the train, but Bat could get on and find him, you know. So the train did stop, and Bat went aboard with his gun and found him. Like, he was indeed on the train, and he pointed the gun at his head and said, hey, I want the money that me and my brother, you know, are owed. You know, $300. Give me $300 right now. And he was, like, calling out, like, help me, I'm being accosted. And nobody gave a shit. They were like, no, dude, we heard that you were a fucking piece of shit.
Yeah, you had this coming,
like,
brother.
Yeah,
And now you're gonna die.
So the dude pulled out a wad of cash, peeled off $300, gave them to Bat, and Bat tipped his hat and left.
Yeah.
And the whole crowd that had gathered around this, they all cheered. They were like, yeah, all right, finally some justice.
And Bat told the story.
Motherfucker should have
Yeah.
said he wanted interest.
Bat took them all down to the saloon and bought everybody drinks and stuff. Like, he was a well-liked guy after that. And people knew that after that, like, you did not fuck with Bat Masterson. That guy was not kidding around. You know what I mean?
Right.
He's like in his 20s. You know? Early 20s.
$300 went a long way back then.
Oh, yeah. I forgot to describe Bat. So Bat was actually a more stocky kind of guy. And he had dark hair, a mustache most of his life, and he had bright, piercing blue eyes. Yeah, he's kind of a stocky guy. You know, Wyatt was kind of tall, slender, muscly, sinewy. But Bat was kind of more stocky.
So he was like a mustachioed Joe Pesci.
Yeah, honestly, that's not bad casting.
That's the Bat.
Yeah. The most infamous town in the West was now aware of Bat, and that he was not to be fucked with. Now, it was called Dodge City. It's gonna be a main place for episodes going forward, Dodge City. It's where we're gonna find ourselves a lot. It was named that because it was built by a nearby fort. Any guesses as to
Fort
what
Dodge.
the nearby... there you go. Fort Dodge. It was built there because
Which I believe is in Iowa?
No, it's in Kansas.
It's in Kansas?
There's Fort, you know...
There's probably a few Fort Dodges.
There's a lot of Fort Dodges. There's a lot of Fort McPhersons, things like this.
So
Fair enough.
This was the Ford.
Real quick, $300, I just put in 1850 because I was like close enough.
Yeah.
$300 in 1850 was $10,690. So Chris, you are correct. $300 would have stretched a long way.
It was 1870s, but yeah.
Yeah. Still,
It would've
it's
probably
not
been-
like it changed that much.
No.
Yeah, no.
Probably been around 10 grand or some shit like that. Before it was called Dodge City, it was actually a part of Mexico. You know, before that, it was wide open territory that Native Americans inhabited. Multiple bands of Comanche, Kiowa, went to that. I'm going to cover this in way more detail later.
Cool.
Trust me, way more detail later.
He's blowing past all the tribes because out of disrespect to them.
Just like the white man did.
Yeah,
Jerry is the white man.
Yeah.
I am indeed.
He's the white man.
The one that you've been hearing about in the news.
The one you've heard so much about.
Everyone.
Now, the main part of Dodge City, though, was actually founded in 1871. It really goes to show how quickly these towns came to be a thing. Like, Bat was there in July of 1872 when this whole thing went down, but the town had just been founded in 1871. You know what I mean? Like, this was fast
brand
moving. All
new
this stuff
town.
happened really fast. Yeah.
Still had that new town smell.
Before
shit.
that,
Yeah.
before that, like the fort was actually named multiple other things after people that died. You know, people that were killed during hostile raids. You know, native raids. It's like, oh, this is going to be named Fort so and so after that guy that died, and then it was burned to the ground by Comanches, and then named something else for a different guy that died.
They named it
before it
eventually
landed
they
on
named it
Dodge.
Yeah, it landed on a Fort Dodge Challenger, and it was too wordy, so they dropped the Challenger.
Yeah,
They
Dodge City.
It was bad luck, they realized, to name the city after the person who died and how they died. So it was like Fort Vinny, who was shot in the face by a fucking Remington single action or whatever. And, but then the town would burn again, and, they'd have to rename it.
Yeah.
And they were just like, let's just leave out the way they died. Because I feel like,
They eventually named it after a guy named Challenger who dodged a bullet. So
Yeah.
it's all there.
It was like, before that, it was like, oh, how'd he die? Killed by Comanche. Okay. How'd this guy die? Killed by Comanche. How'd this guy die?
Dylan
Killed by
pancaked
Comanche.
by drunk dump truck driver.
Yeah.
Who was Comanche?
Throat slashed by Comanche.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, before Bat and Wyatt eventually put Dodge City on the map as the wildest town in the West, Bat had another date with history
Cool.
at a remote buffalo skinning and trading post on the Texas Panhandle, a place called Adobe Walls.
Mm.
And that is where we're going to leave you until part 2 of Wyatt Earp's Wild West.
All right.
Is that where Forrest Gump meets him?
Trust me, Adobe Walls is going to become important much later. I'm going to
Cool.
tell Bat's side of it, and then it'll become much later at another point. Some people who might live around this area
That's cool.
will already know what I'm talking about.
Adobe Walls used to be cool when you could just pay once to go see it instead of having to pay every single
Yeah,
month.
you're not wrong.
If
least
you
that
know,
way-
you know.
At least that way it's constantly updated.
Yeah, they're
And you
constantly updating it with so many new things.
Well, actually, I prefer the monthly. You got to pay like $1,000 for one
Once a year.
version.
Yeah.
Fuck that shit.
Well, I'm excited about the next episode, and frankly, every episode that we have this year.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I'm going to call
We have-
every episode for the whole year.
Yeah.
I'm holding you to that.
And they might not say episode inside the Spotify, the Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, what have you. But when you're listening, I want you to hear episode and see episode, viewers at home,
Yeah.
regardless of whether or not it says episode.
I don't
Whether
think
or
it
not
says.
I named it episode.
On top of that, I don't think we use the word episode in our. It would be like part 1.
Yes.
Well,
Sorry, Tyler.
well,
Yeah.
this is we're already off to a great start this year.
You know?
I'm
We
excited.
had a lot of fun. We learned about the origins of Batman.
Yeah.
I think I wasn't paying attention. I think Val Kilmer would have been a good Batman if it was in a better movie.
And by
I
the way,
still
we're gonna
stand by
meet.
that.
We're gonna meet Doc Holliday in the next episode.
Oh,
Hell
sweet.
yeah!
Yeah, we're gonna learn
Yeah.
all about that. So
90% of what I know about Wyatt Earp is from Tombstone.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Same.
most people. Or the
Really?
Kevin Costner film.
I haven't seen that
It
one.
really leaves an impression.
Yeah, there's a lot
It's
of
not great.
there's a lot of great
There's a-
actors in Tombstone, like a shitload.
There's a lot of actors in that Wyatt Earp movie, but they're all like a bunch of dudes that at the time all looked like each other. So it's that guy that looks like that guy, and they're in the
Yeah.
same movie. And like, there's a bunch of them.
I mean,
Like
Sam
Dennis
Elliott
Quaid.
looks. Oh,
Dennis Quaid is Doc Holliday, and it's like you have Dennis Quaid and Kevin Costner in the same movie. Like,
Yeah.
they look exactly
Right.
the same.
it's
You
kind of
know?
samey. They got Bill Paxton, Bill Pullman.
Yeah, Bill
The
Pullman
rest
is
of
actually.
old dirty bastard.
Bill Pullman is Morgan Earp. That would be hilarious.
No, Bill Pullman is actually Ed Masterson in the Wyatt
Oh.
Earp movie.
It'd be funny if
Yeah.
he was he played the same character Bill Paxton did.
Oh yeah, that would be really confusing.
I almost confused myself. I was
feel
like, "Am I
like-
saying the right name?"
yeah.
They don't even
I did
look
enunciate.
different, People mix them up because their names sound
They
similar,
do.
not because they look similar.
Yeah, that's
They,
true.
You know?
But
if they didn't have
I'm
this,
telling you,
they
go watch
kind-
that Wyatt Earp movie. All those people look exactly the same.
Yeah, it's got Daniel Radcliffe and Elijah Wood in it.
Yeah.
They were very young, especially Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah.
Who would have been?
And I don't care what anyone says, Willem Dafoe and Dennis Leary.
Yeah.
They should be brothers in something.
A little bit.
I
They
can
should
see
be
that.
brothers in something. Follow us on all the social media, whatevers. You know,
5-star
the Twitter.
review on iTunes. Oh, and
Spotify.
I think you can do it on Spotify now.
You can do it on Spotify,
review on
yeah,
Spotify. I don't know.
Take 2 seconds, and that would really help us out. You don't got to spend a dime to do that.
I reviewed us on Spotify because I do not have an iPhone, but I gave us 1 star because I was mad at Jerry that day, frankly.
And Jerry, you bring up a good point when you say that a review is a great way to help us out without spending a dime. What if folks do want to spend a dime?
Oh,
If you do want to give us however much a month, $5, which in most places is about a beer. You can buy us one beer that we can share amongst ourselves one month,
we'll stand around it and
Yep.
drink.
and we drink out of it. Yes, we take turns.
I like to.
You can do that.
That's how we all got
that's,
COVID.
Yeah, that's on Patreon. You could do that. You can give us $1 a month if you want, which just helps sort of keep the lights on. $5, $10. We love all of our patrons that give us that, because you know what that does? That keeps not only this show free for everybody, and it pays for our subscription to keep the show up, but it also pays for books that I have to read and to put together all of these episodes for you. So it really does pay to keep the show
totally.
up. So thank all of you for doing that. Thanks again to all that. We have another announcement for our patrons. We have
You want
another
me to
show.
take it away?
Yeah, take it
that-
away.
Okay, so that's what I was going to segue into. We've tried to make good on our promise of having exclusive content on our Patreon, and we have. But this year, we're really going to blow the lid off it. And as I mentioned last episode, you can expect the first episode of the new Patreon exclusive show, the Tyler Armentrout Project, featuring Christopher Whedon. I'm sorry. HistoryBoiz presents the Tyler Armentrout Project, featuring Christopher Whedon.
Yeah.
It's going to be 12 additional hours of HistoryBoiz style content, where it's going to be a retrospective series where Christopher Whedon and myself revisit the early episodes of the show and kind of give additional insights, maybe discuss some historical facts about the topic that Jerry missed. But really, it's something for our fans who want to know a little bit more about the origin of the show. What was going on at the time that we were shooting it. It's a lot of kind of inside baseball stuff. Really cool, and we're excited to be getting into making that. You can expect the first episode this month.
All right.
There we go.
I'm looking forward to that as well.
All right, that's it. Thank you for listening to the show. I am Christopher Whedon, and I am a history boy.
I am HistoryBoiz presents Tyler Armentrout, History Boy, signing off. By the way, the name of that show is TBA. That's not the official name. It might end up
Fine
being
with it. It's pretty funny.
I'm Zach Mack, and I am also a history boy.
And I am Jerry Nash. Thank you again so much for listening. I am a History Boy and ready to start our new season in 2022. Mr. Zach.
Love you, bye.
Without a lot of fun, we'll see you next time. For a just belongs, what